Opening Stoic Foundations in Relationships. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't show itself through words or gestures, but through restraint, through stillness, through a man's ability to sit with discomfort and not let it define him. That strength has a name. It's Stoicism. And when it comes to relationships, especially with women, few men realize how critical this kind of grounded presence really is. You see, most men are pulled around by their emotions like leaves in the wind, chasing affection, avoiding rejection, addicted to validation. They think love means losing themselves in someone else, but the Stoics saw things differently. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, you can't control how someone else feels about you, what they say, or even whether they stay. But you can control how deeply rooted you are in your own values. That's where real attraction begins. Not in charm, not in grand gestures, but in stillness, in discipline, in presence. In this video, we'll explore how ancient Stoic philosophy isn't just a path to inner peace. It's a blueprint for powerful, meaningful relationships. You'll learn why certain men seem effortlessly magnetic and how their secret lies not in trying harder, but in letting go of neediness, of control, of ego. Stay with me, because by the end, you won't just understand how Stoicism transforms relationships, you'll feel it. Hide your weaknesses. In today's world, vulnerability is often romanticized. Social media rewards oversharing. Popular culture tells men to open up as a path to healing. And while there is value in self-awareness and connection, the Stoics offer a different perspective, one that values dignity, restraint, and inner strength. A Stoic man does not parade his wounds. He does not bleed publicly for applause. He faces adversity with calm, with composure, and most importantly, with silence. Now let's be clear. Stoicism isn't about pretending you're invincible. It's not about suppressing pain until you break. It's about channeling that pain, transforming it into discipline, into presence, into something so grounded, so composed, that the storm inside you becomes a source of quiet power rather than outward chaos. Think about it. When was the last time you were truly drawn to someone who constantly complained? Who spilled every fear, every insecurity at the first sign of discomfort? Likely never. Because we don't trust people who can't hold their own weight. We don't admire men who seek pity. We respect those who bear the burden without needing the world to validate their struggle. In relationships, this becomes even more important. A woman doesn't fall for a man because he tells her how hard life is. She falls for the man who moves through that hardship without being shaken. She senses his strength not in his words, but in his stillness, in his ability to hold space, not just for her, but for himself. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have, the power to revoke at any moment." This is the heart of Stoicism. You are not what happens to you. You are how you respond. When you're going through a storm, don't broadcast it. Stand tall, show up, keep your promises, do the work, and let that silence speak louder than 1,000 pleas for sympathy. Now, this doesn't mean you never share your truth. But timing and intention matter. You don't dump your darkness onto someone else's lap and call it intimacy. You wait. You observe. And when trust is earned, when the space is safe and strong, you choose your words with precision, not to seek comfort, but to offer clarity. There is immense power in restraint, in not reacting, in letting others wonder what fuels your fire, while you quietly build an empire beneath the surface. Imagine walking into a room. You don't have to say much. Your presence alone communicates stability, peace, depth. That's not something you can fake. It's something you cultivate through hardship, through stillness, through hiding your weaknesses not out of shame but out of wisdom. Because here's the truth. Weakness isn't something to display for attention. It's something to refine in private, to study, to wrestle with behind closed doors. So that when you do step into the light, you don't bring your chaos with you. You bring your composure. And when a woman meets a man like that, she feels it immediately. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't over-explain. He listens more than he talks. And in that silence, she senses safety. She senses strength. Not the loud, performative kind, but the rare, grounded kind that only life's trials can produce. So, next time you feel broken, angry, afraid, don't run to be seen. Stand still, observe, reflect. Let your discipline hold you until your soul is ready to move again. Because the man who hides his weakness with intention isn't hiding at all. He's becoming unshakable. 2. Hide your mistakes. There's a modern tendency to equate openness with strength. In some spaces, vulnerability is championed as the highest virtue, and confessing your flaws is often seen as proof of authenticity. But Stoicism draws a different line, one far more disciplined, intentional, and ultimately liberating. Not every truth must be spoken. Not every mistake must be shared. A Stoic man recognizes that mistakes are not badges to be displayed. They are stepping stones to inner refinement. To stumble is human, but to rise with dignity is divine. When you broadcast every misstep in the name of transparency, you risk reducing your presence in the eyes of others, especially in the eyes of a woman who naturally seeks strength, certainty, and grounded leadership in a man. Here's the paradox. By oversharing your faults, you unconsciously ask someone else, often her, to carry the emotional weight of your growth. It shifts your burden onto the relationship, and while she may say she appreciates the honesty, a part of her instinctively wonders, if he can't hold himself together, how will he ever hold space for me? This isn't about pretending to be flawless. It's about self-respect, about owning your journey so thoroughly that you no longer need others to validate it. Mistakes are sacred when they lead to transformation. They are not tools for sympathy. They are lessons for solitude. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is not the things that happen to us that trouble us, but our opinion about them." This insight applies just as much to how we process our own failures as it does to how we view external events. A man guided by Stoicism does not crumble under guilt or shame. He reframes the mistake, reclaims his power, and quietly works on becoming better. Let's look at a common example. A man forgets an important date, her birthday, an anniversary, a meaningful event. He panics. He confesses, apologizes excessively, and spins a web of self-blame. She may initially appreciate the remorse, but deep down, the emotional equation begins to shift. If this becomes a pattern, constant self-flagellation in the name of openness, he's no longer the mountain she can lean on. He becomes the one leaning too often. Now consider another type of man. He misses the moment, acknowledges it once with sincerity, not groveling, and then makes a quiet but meaningful adjustment to his behavior. No drama, no guilt performance, just action, just presence. And over time, this steady course of correction earns far more respect than 1,000 confessions ever could. This isn't about hiding mistakes out of fear. It's about protecting the sacredness of your inner work. When you share a mistake, ask yourself, am I sharing this to relieve myself of discomfort or to genuinely offer value? Most of the time, it's the former. And the Stoic path requires a man to bear his own discomfort, to sit with it, and to use it as fuel. Women are intuitive. They feel the difference between a man who is self-contained versus one who constantly leaks his insecurity into the space between them. One draws her in, the other exhausts her. That's not because she lacks empathy. It's because she instinctively knows she cannot surrender to a man who hasn't mastered himself. Your mistakes are your curriculum. Learn from them, not publicly, but privately. This is where the real transformation happens, in the quiet discipline of reflection, in the decision to shift course without making an announcement, in the ability to build a more solid foundation, without applause. There will be times when sharing a mistake is useful, perhaps when it brings clarity, diffuses tension, or allows for real intimacy to unfold. But even then, timing and tone matter. A Stoic man doesn't confess out of compulsion. He communicates with calm intention, never from desperation. To keep your mistakes to yourself is not to be deceptive. It's to be discerning. Discernment is the virtue that guards your masculinity. It keeps your dignity intact. It ensures that you grow from within and not through the shaky scaffolding of someone else's reassurance. The next time you falter, and you will, remember that your immediate response speaks volumes. Will you spiral outward, seeking absolution in her eyes? Or will you turn inward, reflect deeply, and rise in silence? A Stoic man knows that the path to becoming unshakable is paved with errors, but he walks that path with composure. He does not broadcast his stumbles. He refines his stride. Because at the end of the day, true strength is not how loudly you confess your flaws. It's how silently you correct them. Hide your dreams. In a world that celebrates broadcasting every ambition, the Stoic man chooses the opposite path. He understands that dreams are sacred, not because others validate them, but because they are rooted in his own values, his quiet sense of purpose. When a man shares his dreams too early or too openly, especially with someone who hasn't earned that level of trust, he risks weakening their power. Why? Because speaking them aloud can create a false sense of achievement, as if the mere declaration is progress. The Stoics caution against this illusion. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Dreams, therefore, should be guarded like treasure, protected from both the cynicism of the world and the hunger for praise. It's easy to fall into the trap of using dreams for validation. You share them in passing conversation. You look for admiration, for someone to say, "Wow, that's incredible. You're really going places." But the Stoic man is immune to this kind of need. He doesn't need applause to know he's on the right path. He doesn't require others to understand his journey because the meaning is internal. He finds satisfaction, not in the dream itself, but in the steady pursuit of it. This doesn't mean a Stoic man suppresses his goals. It means he channels his energy toward quiet execution instead of loud declaration. He knows that the more he talks about what he will do, the less likely he is to do it. He lets his actions reveal his character, not his announcements. As Epictetus might say, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. There's also another layer. When you share your dreams with someone who doesn't understand your values, or worse, someone who might manipulate your desires, it opens a door you may not want opened. It invites opinions, judgments, doubts. And if you're not deeply grounded, those doubts can plant seeds. Over time, the dream bends, not to your will, but to the expectations of others. The Stoic man doesn't let that happen. He stays anchored in purpose, not praise. He refines his dreams in silence, testing them against adversity, making sure they are truly his. And when he takes action, it's deliberate, not performative. He doesn't hustle for attention. He works in the shadows, preparing for the moment when the result speaks for itself. This approach also builds trust and respect. While others are constantly advertising potential they haven't fulfilled, the Stoic man becomes a mystery. People notice his discipline. They feel the quiet intensity behind his presence. Women especially are drawn to this energy, not because he brags, but because he doesn't. There's an unspoken question in the air. What is he building? That curiosity creates attraction deeper than any flashy promise. So if you're a man with vision, protect it. If you're driven by something bigger than comfort or applause, keep that fire close to your chest. Let the world see your results, not your to-do list. Your dreams are not public property. They are a contract between you and your conscience. Keep them sacred. Keep them silent. And above all, pursue them not for status, but for self-respect. Hide your feelings. In today's world, vulnerability is often romanticized. We hear phrases like, open up, speak your truth, or don't bottle it up. And while there's value in honest communication, a Stoic man understands that not all emotions deserve the spotlight, especially in the early stages of a relationship. A Stoic doesn't suppress emotion. He regulates it. There's a vital distinction between suppression and self-mastery. Suppression is fear. Mastery is strength. A Stoic man doesn't deny that he feels anger, sadness, or love. He simply doesn't allow those feelings to dictate his actions, especially when they could compromise his dignity, clarity, or purpose. When a man constantly expresses every emotion, every anxiety, every frustration, every moment of joy or despair, he's not being authentic. He's being reactive, and reactivity is the opposite of grounded masculinity. Emotional restraint isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being composed. It's about choosing when, how, and to whom emotions are shared. Why does this matter in relationships with women? Because while women appreciate emotional depth, they're drawn to men who can contain their emotions, not be consumed by them. A man who leaks his feelings without discretion often ends up placing emotional responsibility on the woman, expecting her to reassure him, comfort him, or fix him. Over time, this drains attraction. It blurs the polarity. It weakens the sense of leadership she craves. Think about this. When a storm is coming, do people turn to the loudest voice in the room or the calmest? In chaotic moments, women look for emotional shelter, not another storm. This doesn't mean never sharing. A Stoic man may choose to reveal his emotions, but he does so selectively. He shares from a place of clarity, not confusion. From intention, not neediness. From strength, not desperation. For example, he doesn't panic if she pulls away for a few days. He doesn't flood her inbox with, "Are you okay?" messages. He breathes, he waits, he trusts, he reflects, and when they reconnect, he addresses the shift if necessary with calm curiosity, not anxious over-explaining. This is emotional leadership, and it's deeply attractive. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That's what happens when we vent every fear, every insecurity. We amplify the chaos. But the Stoic man knows, silence can be sacred, stillness can be strong. By holding space within himself, he creates space for others to trust him. There's also a strategic side to this. When you share too much too soon, you rob the other person of discovery. Mystery fades. Emotional exposure is like fire. It gives warmth when measured, but burns when uncontrolled. A Stoic man lets her wonder, observe, and earn access to his emotional world, not as a game, but as a form of respect, for her and for himself. It's worth asking yourself, do you speak to feel better or to bring clarity? Do you share to connect or to be validated? And if no one could comfort you, would you still be okay? These are Stoic questions, and the man who can answer them honestly becomes emotionally unshakable. He doesn't repress, he refines. Because true strength isn't in how loudly you express your feelings. It's in how clearly you understand them, and how quietly you carry them until the right time. Hide your secrets. In a world that rewards oversharing, where privacy is often mistaken for dishonesty and silence for guilt, the Stoic man walks a different path. He understands that not everything needs to be spoken. Not every wound needs to be exposed. Not every thought deserves an audience. Modern culture might encourage vulnerability as a currency for intimacy. The quicker you spill your truths, the quicker you bond. But that's not always true. For a Stoic, some things must remain unsaid. Not out of fear, not out of shame, but out of reverence. Your secrets, the things you've endured, the parts of your soul you've built in solitude, these aren't things to flaunt. They're sacred. Cicero once said, "The most sacred thing in the world is the human soul." And in a world that constantly demands more access to your soul, your ability to keep parts of yourself hidden is not only powerful, it's necessary. A Stoic man does not gossip. He does not air his grievances in public. He doesn't need the world to validate his pain or justify his silence. He preserves the dignity of others, and more importantly, he protects the sanctity of his own story. Ask yourself this: how often do you feel pressured to share simply because silence makes others uncomfortable? How often have you revealed something too early and regretted it? Secrets are not walls, they are foundations. You don't hide your story out of weakness. You contain it out of strength. Because not every person is ready to carry the weight of your truth. And not every listener is worthy of hearing it. A man who leaks everything he knows about himself, about others, is not strong. He's unstable. He cannot be trusted with his own soul, much less anyone else's. And a man who is easily read is easily forgotten. But a man with depth, restraint, and a mysterious stillness, that man stays on a woman's mind. That man commands respect in every room he enters, not by being loud, but by being unreadable. In a society addicted to constant display, to Instagram captions and emotional outbursts, privacy becomes power. Selective silence becomes magnetic. The Stoics were never men of spectacle. Marcus Aurelius kept a personal journal not to be published, but to refine himself. Seneca wrote letters to friends not to impress crowds, but to deepen virtue. Privacy wasn't just a preference, it was a discipline. You don't have to share what you're going through. You don't have to explain the reason behind every decision. You don't have to tell her everything just because she asks. Respect her curiosity, but honor your boundaries. What does this look like in action? It means declining to gossip when others pry. It means resisting the urge to defend yourself when misunderstood. It means holding your truth, even in the face of emotional pressure. A Stoic knows this. What is known by everyone loses its weight, but what is kept sacred becomes a source of strength. This doesn't mean being dishonest, it means being discerning. Because mystery is not deception, it is dignity. When you speak, let your words be meaningful. And when you choose silence, let it be powerful. She doesn't need to know every chapter of your life to trust you. In fact, the more you preserve your depth, the more she'll lean in. Not because you're withholding, but because your silence suggests something real, something earned, something unshakable. Don't fear being misunderstood. Fear being too exposed. And above all, remember, your soul is not a stage. It's a sanctuary. Hide your pain, everyone suffers. But not everyone suffers with dignity. Pain in today's world is often worn like a badge, flaunted on social media, turned into performance art, dramatized for attention. We see people post every heartbreak, complain about every inconvenience, and speak of every emotional bruise as if the act of sharing it makes them stronger. But Stoicism teaches us the opposite. A real man does not perform his pain. He endures it, silently, calmly, and with grace. Seneca once said, "Fire tests gold, misfortune tests brave men." In the fire of hardship, you discover what you're made of, and that discovery doesn't require a witness. When a Stoic man suffers, he does not look around for applause. He looks inward, because to suffer well is not to show the world how much you hurt. It's to show yourself how deep your strength runs. This doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means carrying what hurts with composure. It means being able to stand in the storm and not crumble. To wake up broken but still move forward, without needing the world to clap for your resilience. Ask yourself this. Have you ever told someone about your pain and then felt more exposed than relieved? Have you ever regretted giving someone access to your struggle, only to realize they didn't respect it? Pain is sacred, and the more you share it casually, the more its meaning dissolves. A Stoic man doesn't hide pain because he's afraid. He hides it because he's strong enough to hold it himself. There's something deeply magnetic about a man who suffers in silence. A man who doesn't flinch at discomfort. A man who can carry sorrow in his eyes but still speak with calm. Because that man shows the world, I've been through fire, and I didn't need to scream to survive it. Now, this doesn't mean you should never seek support. It means you choose when, where, and with whom you reveal the depths of your struggle. Vulnerability, when used with wisdom, can create connection. But vulnerability without discretion is chaos. Pain, like any powerful force, needs a container. And your container is your character. When you hold your pain, when you breathe through it, reflect on it, learn from it, you turn suffering into strength. But when you project it onto others without control, you turn strength into spectacle. Think of the men you admire, the ones who command respect without needing to shout, the ones who carry weight in their silence. They've suffered, but they don't perform their scars, they embody their lessons. This is the Stoic path. It teaches you that pain is not meant to define you. It's meant to refine you. And so when life strikes, when you lose something, when your heart breaks, when everything feels like it's falling apart, your first instinct is not to collapse. It's to straighten your spine. It's to say to yourself, this is mine to carry, and I will carry it well. Women are drawn to men who possess this kind of inner steel, not because they're emotionless, but because they are trustworthy in times of trial. A man who can hold his pain can hold hers. A man who doesn't dramatize his suffering won't be consumed by hers. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you capable. Remember, hiding your pain is not about bottling it up forever. It's about not using it as currency. It's about not using it to manipulate sympathy. It's about not leaking it into places where it doesn't belong, because your pain, when held with courage, becomes your teacher. And every man needs a teacher that walks with him silently, shaping his thoughts, deepening his presence, sharpening his edge. So the next time life hits you hard, and it will, pause, breathe, reflect. Don't rush to speak it out loud. Instead, ask, what is this pain trying to forge inside me? And carry it with that quiet kind of strength, the kind that doesn't beg to be seen, but is impossible to ignore. Hide your pleasures. There's a strange paradox in modern life. Everyone is chasing pleasure, and yet no one seems satisfied. From social media flexes to indulgent lifestyles broadcast for likes, we've been taught that pleasure is something to show off, something that defines success, confidence, even happiness. But the Stoics knew better. Pleasure, when uncontrolled, becomes a prison. It enslaves rather than frees. Epictetus said it best. Freedom is not procured by full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling desire. A Stoic man does not flaunt his pleasures. He doesn't seek to prove that he's living well by posting every steak dinner, every beach vacation, every moment of comfort. Why? Because the moment pleasure becomes performance, it loses its purity. You don't enjoy something because it brings you peace. You enjoy it because it brings you validation, and validation is never satisfied. So the wise man learns to savor life without advertising it. Think of it like this. A man who constantly talks about the wine he drinks rarely drinks it for the taste. He drinks it to be seen. He drinks to prove something. But the man who truly enjoys wine, who truly appreciates what it means to slow down and be present, he doesn't need to speak. His peace is private. His pleasure is personal. Pleasures, in the Stoic view, are not evil. They're not something to avoid entirely. But they are to be approached with caution. Why? Because unchecked pleasure becomes craving, and craving leads to weakness. When you need something external to feel okay, a woman's touch, the latest gadget, that extra drink, you become a slave to it. Your mind is no longer your own. Your day is no longer your own. Your peace is now tied to something outside of your control. And what do the Stoics teach? That the only thing you ever truly control is yourself. A Stoic man doesn't run from pleasure, but he doesn't chase it either. He lets it arrive naturally, and when it does, he enjoys it quietly. He doesn't need others to know. He doesn't need a stage to validate his happiness. He is satisfied in silence. This is what makes him magnetic, because most people live in addiction to stimulation. They broadcast every moment of indulgence, not because they're truly joyful, but because they're deeply restless. And a man who can enjoy deeply without noise stands out. His self-control radiates. His calm is contagious. Women notice that. Not the man who brags about his lifestyle, but the man who has a lifestyle worth noticing, yet says nothing. This doesn't mean you hide every pleasure in shame. It means you hold your joy with reverence, like a fire that's beautiful, but dangerous when left unattended. Ask yourself, do I seek pleasure to enrich my life, or to escape it? If it's escape, then no amount of pleasure will ever be enough. Because the itch you're trying to scratch isn't on the outside, it's in your spirit. The Stoic man understands that real pleasure comes when desire no longer controls him. He trains his mind to find satisfaction in simplicity. A quiet morning, a disciplined day, a meaningful conversation. He finds joy in self-mastery, not self-indulgence. Even in romantic relationships, this shows. A man who constantly craves her attention, her body, her time, he's exhausting. But a man who is already full within himself, a man who doesn't chase pleasure, but lives with depth and restraint, that man is a mystery. He's a challenge. He's power. Because if you can't control your pleasure, you can't protect your peace. And peace, in the end, is more valuable than any fleeting high. So eat well, but not to numb yourself. Love well, but not to lose yourself. Celebrate, but don't forget what brought you here. And when you find something, or someone, that brings you joy, don't reach for the camera. Don't reach for applause. Just smile quietly, and let that be enough. Hide your love wisely. Love is powerful. It lifts, heals, inspires. But when mishandled, it can also destroy. That's why a Stoic man doesn't throw his love around like confetti. He guards it like fire. Not because he's afraid to love, but because he understands what real love actually requires. In a world where love is often performed for social media or used as a bargaining chip in relationships, the Stoic man holds a different posture. He knows that love, to be meaningful, must be both deep and disciplined. He doesn't need to broadcast it. He doesn't need to say, "I love you," 20 times a day to prove it. His love shows in the way he shows up, calm, grounded, consistent. In the way he listens, protects, provides structure. In the way he maintains his values, even when emotions run high. Because love without virtue is chaos. It turns into obsession. attachment, or control. A Stoic man never confuses love with dependency. He doesn't collapse his identity into another person. He can be fully present with someone, fully connected, and still remain fully himself. His love doesn't drain him. It deepens him. And it deepens the woman he gives it to, too. The problem today is that many men equate love with surrendering, their backbone. They confuse kindness with overgiving. They think the more they sacrifice themselves, the more worthy of love they become. But this only backfires. Because when a man gives too much too soon, without discernment, he loses respect. He loses polarity. He loses her attraction. A Stoic man knows love is real, but not all-consuming. He doesn't fall into the trap of romantic idealism. He knows that emotions are fickle and relationships are hard work. So instead of chasing the highs, he commits to the discipline of showing up, quietly, steadily, with integrity. When he loves through action, not just through sweet words or grand gestures, but through reliability, through trust, through the ability to remain unshaken when emotions rise. That's what makes a woman feel safe. That's what earns her devotion. He also understands that love is a gift, not a right. He doesn't demand affection. He doesn't manipulate to get closeness. He doesn't measure love by how much attention he receives. He gives because it's who he is, not because he expects something in return. But here's the paradox. The man who doesn't chase love is the one who is most loved, because his love is rare. His energy is calm. He doesn't overexpose his emotions or make her the center of his universe. And that, ironically, makes her want to be closer. This doesn't mean he's cold or distant. On the contrary, a Stoic man can be deeply passionate, but he expresses it with clarity and boundaries. He never loses himself in love. He brings his full self into love. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And nowhere is this more true than in love. If a man's thoughts are anxious, needy, reactive, his love will reflect that. But if his mind is steady, discerning, noble, his love becomes a safe harbor. He doesn't say, "I love you" out of habit. He says it when it carries weight. He doesn't show affection to prove his worth. He does it to elevate the relationship, to build something sacred. This kind of love is powerful. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It holds its form, even when tested. And when she feels that kind of presence, she doesn't just feel loved. She feels respected. She feels seen. She feels chosen. Not for her beauty or attention, but for her soul. So if you love with intention. But don't hand your heart out like a flyer on the street. Let your actions speak louder than your confessions. Let your stability speak louder than your need. Let your presence speak louder than your passion. Because in the end, a Stoic man doesn't hide his love out of fear. He guards it with wisdom, extended reflection, stillness as the ultimate power. Let's pause here, not to add more information but to reflect. In a world that constantly tells men to express more, to be more transparent, more emotional, more open, what if the deeper truth is this? Silence is strength. The modern man is often told that withholding his feelings, his doubts, his pain, or his love is repression. But that's not what Stoicism teaches. Stoicism isn't about being cold or distant. It's about knowing when to reveal and when to withhold. It's about discernment, about timing, about sovereignty over the self. There's a kind of sacred weight to a man who doesn't give everything away. Think of the men in your life you respected most. Were they loud, over-explaining, constantly oversharing their struggles and dreams? Probably not. You respected them because they had presence, not noise. Stillness is the most underappreciated masculine quality in our time, but it's the one that leaves the deepest impression. Why? Because it implies control, not just of emotions, but of attention, of energy, of desire. And a man who controls these truly controls his life. You see, this isn't about deception. It's not about hiding out of fear. It's about protecting the sacred, your values, your boundaries, your soul, and sharing those only with people who've earned access. Not everyone deserves to know your heart. Not everyone can hold your pain with respect. And not everyone is meant to carry your dreams beside you. That's not cynical. That's wisdom. The Stoic man does not build walls. He builds gates. And he stands at those gates with calm presence, watching who enters and why. Because once you realize that not everything needs to be shared, you begin to regain your power. You become lighter, clearer, quieter, and in that quiet, you become unmistakably strong. The warrior who spoke little. In a forgotten village carved into the cliffs of the Aegean coast, there lived a man they called the Still One. No one remembered his real name. The elders said he once fought in wars so far from home that even the birds could not find their way back. But when he returned, he didn't tell stories. He didn't boast about battles or scars. He sat in silence, fixed the village roof tiles, drank his tea at dawn, and smiled. Only when the children laughed. Young men would come to him with their heartbreaks, their anger, their dreams. They wanted advice, steps, strategies. He rarely spoke more than a sentence. Sometimes all he said was, "You are louder than what you carry." Some were frustrated, others left confused, but a few stayed. They began to notice how his silence had weight, how when he looked at you, you felt seen, not judged, how he never argued, never tried to win, never tried to explain. And yet, when a mother lost her child in the winter storm, he found her before the others. When the crops failed, he had already prepared stores for the entire village. When a boy wanted to run away, it was his quiet presence that made him sit down and weep instead. What made him powerful wasn't his strength. It wasn't knowledge. It was that he knew what to reveal and what to withhold. He had mastered the rare art of internal clarity. He wasn't hiding. He was protecting what was sacred. The villagers began to see. Silence is not the absence of emotion. It is its transformation. Pain, dreams, even love, when held inside a still vessel, grow deeper, stronger, more precise. Years later, when the Still One passed away, they didn't bury him with swords or honors. They planted a tree where he used to sit. It didn't bloom for 3 years, but when it did, it bloomed in winter. They said the roots had waited for the right season, just like he always did. You see, in a world that screams for attention, the man who chooses stillness commands it. In a world obsessed with oversharing, the one who holds back becomes unforgettable. This is the Stoic way. Not cold, not emotionless, but intentional. Like the warrior who speaks little, but when he does, the whole room listens. Conclusion: the Stoic way of loving. To love like a Stoic is not to love less, but to love wiser. It is to understand that the deepest form of love does not come from performance, obsession, or endless declarations. It comes from a place of inner completeness, where your happiness is not borrowed from another person, but rooted in your own soul. Many today confuse openness with overexposure. They believe that to be loved, one must be completely known, constantly expressive, endlessly available. But this only leads to burnout, resentment, and a loss of self. A Stoic man does not vanish into silence. He chooses his words with purpose. He does not hide his feelings. He honors them privately until they're ready to be shared with integrity. He does not shut down. He remains calm in the fire, anchored in values that are not swayed by praise or rejection. To hide in this context is not to deceive. It's to protect what is sacred: your pain, your ambitions, your love. Not because they are weak, but because they are powerful. When you expose too much too soon, you dilute the meaning. But when you hold back with strength, you invite depth, mystery, respect. It is not easy to live like this. In a world of oversharing, restraint is radical. In a culture of instant gratification, patience is rebellion. But this is exactly why it's noble. A Stoic man becomes attractive not because he tries to be, but because he embodies something rare: quiet power, disciplined emotion, and unwavering purpose. He is the mountain in the storm, the calm in the chaos, the steady hand in moments of doubt. And women, whether they admit it or not, are drawn not to the man who gives everything away too quickly, but to the man who makes them rise to meet his stillness. Remember what Epictetus taught. The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Be that person, for yourself first. The rest will follow. Final message: you don't need to perform to be loved. You don't need to chase to feel wanted. You don't need anyone else to make you whole, because the only thing you need to be happy is yourself.